And thus, yesterday and the day before yesterday, I was awake for 40 hours straight. I lied down 2 times, but I did not dip below consciousness. I think mostly if I lie down in phases like this, my dopamine regenerates. Why this hypothesis? Why this hypothesis that it's mostly dopamine regeneration that happens in these what I call ultradian lows? Because I can also kind of flatten these ultradian lows out by let's say taking 100 milligrams of vitamin B6. Thus, it seems to be the case, because vitamin B6 in my case seems to be so potent, to then not be a bottleneck in the conversion of L-dopa to dopamine. So, because I can flatten out some of my ultradian lows that otherwise happen quite frequently, especially if I'm metabolically restrained and insufficiently regenerated, which I often am in summer. So what happens in summer is basically a constant metabolic disaster, where my body just cannot handle being awake. But also because in summer sun hours are so much longer compared to winter, and thus the light is such a strong stimulus onto my system. If I don't abstain from the light to eventually be able to fall asleep, I basically am becoming more metabolically strained the longer I am awake, but I also cannot properly sleep with digestion having finished, a low resting heart rate. And so in summer, especially if I don't have an activity which I can utilize like a lever to reduce my ability to be awake, mostly by increasing adenosine, that is basically available on demand, independent of opening hours of swimming pools and gyms. If I don't have this available, then I'm awake, and eventually I also cannot run because I already ran in the last couple of days. I'm awake. My cardiovascular ability is still high, but I cannot burn it sufficiently. And the longer I am awake, the less mental ability I also have to control cardiovascularly my body, which then means I'm awake, but the metabolic stress of just being awake is too high. But of course, if I am awake, my body then at least needs protein. And so if I ingest protein, I then need to wait at least another 6 hours for me to being able to fall asleep again properly, with digestion again having finished. But the longer I am awake, the harder it becomes to cardiovascularly work out, because I'm becoming mentally more and more drained. And thus I cannot drive the cardiovascular intensity that my body would still require to fall asleep, because mentally I'm already so low. So basically my two systems are not synchronous any longer. If now mentally I go below a certain threshold, which maybe can be approximated by saying that there is something like functional IQ, which is basically how close to one's genetic baseline, which now one could just standardize to 100, is on average or at a single point in time. So basically if my FIQ goes below a certain threshold of my genetic ability, but because we standardized that genetic ability, one can just now say 100%, 80%, etc. And this would be the same for everyone. Let's say if my mental ability goes